Can you see the screen? Hello. Is the screen visible to you?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay. Good. I think we can start now because it's already 10:05. I told you that I'll be having a new unit for discussion today, and we'll start that. In the meanwhile, regarding the, I have seen around 24 students filling up the form. Of course, I'll be expecting more students to fill the form. So once the information is available, then it's easier for us to take a call on that. But anyhow, please inform your friends so that they can fill up the form. The deadline is set for 11:45. Basically, it's more or less midnight today. So let them fill it up. Then we'll take a call on regarding how to go ahead with this evaluation mode. Okay. Insofar as this new unit is concerned, actually, we'll be interested in having the discussion on a new topic. That's the valuation of environmental goods, or we can say valuation of environmental amenities. In fact, we need to understand why this is important. In fact, theoretically, if we look into, we find that actually this valuation concept has been the most important contribution of economics towards environment. Because many a time we're not sure what the value of environmental goods and services will be because they do not have a proper market. In normal circumstances, for ordinary goods and services, we rely on the market price and we consider the market price to be the value of the goods or services. The kind of fee that we pay to the doctor or maybe to a lawyer. So those things might represent the kind of value of the people that are providing us some services. Similarly, for the ordinary goods, which are actually produced with the intersection of interplay of the forces of demand and supply, the price will normally tell us about the value of the goods which we get normally in the market. But of course, this price may not be the correct representation of the value of a good. But even then, it gives us some idea about the kind of value that the goods and services might be having. Now, valuation of environmental amenity is required because the society puts values on the environmental amenities, kind of forest, wetland, okay, hills, okay, air, good drinking water facility, river. So all those things are kind of environmental assets, and society puts value on these environmental assets because of certain things. Because we know that we depend critically on these assets to provide us a lot of things. It might be goods and services. It might be kind of basic life support that is being provided by the environment. So many things are there. So we take into account, then we find that the value means these things are valuable to us. Now, since the society puts value on such amenities, so obviously it is desirable that they should be preserved and conserved. Of course, when we talk about preservation or conservation, the preservation and conservation may not happen in the air. You need to put in effort for that, and you need to put in expenses for that. So you have to undertake expenditure to conserve or preserve the environmental resources. So that way, in fact, we can say that there is a cost involved in the process. So since this preservation or conservation involve cost, so decision has to be taken regarding the amount that is socially justified. So that will be based on actually the values. So that is why the valuation process or valuation of environmental resources becomes important. We need to understand so what economic valuation of environmental amenities will be, and what are the different tools that can be used for carrying out environmental valuation. I hope you can understand why we need to take up valuation of environmental amenities. Is it okay with you? So normally in economics, what happens when you talk about value? Actually, we talk about economic value. Now, economic value might be one of the many ways to define and measure overall value. Okay, so different types of values might be important. For example, we can talk about social value, cultural value, all those things will be there. But one important way of looking into the issue of values will be the economic value, because economic values will be useful when we make economic choices. When we talk about economic choices, basically these are the choices that involve trade-off in allocating resources. For example, we always know that actually our means of meeting our requirements are very limited. So that is why the limited resources have to be allocated in different activities. So if we take up one activity, maybe the other activities cannot be taken up. So that is there is a trade-off. If I want to purchase a pair of jeans, probably I will not be in a position to go for a kind of purchasing maybe pizza from foodies. So that is the trade-off. You have to take only one. Actually, you have to prioritize your choice. So that is the thing. Choices that involve trade-off. So in allocating resources, so that is actually uh, that is the thing so which we need to take into account while talking about this economic value or economic choices. So measures of economic value are based on what people want. I might prefer having a kind of materialistic thing. Somebody might be okay thinking about having some kind of other things. So what we prefer, what kind of thing we want. So based on that, actually economic value is decided or determined. Normally, in economics, we assume that it is the individuals, not the government, so who will be judging best of what they want. It's not that in the case of so that is basically we are talking about a market economy. So where let the people do whatever they want to do. Basically, it's a kind of laissez-faire economy we talk about. So where people decide on what kind of things are required, and accordingly production takes place. Okay, so in essence, you can say demand drives the economic production activities. So it's something like that. It's but in case of centralized economies, for example, some point of time, Soviet Russia. So everything was decided by the government. In case of market economies or maybe laissez-faire economy, so it's the other way around. So where the individuals will be deciding on what goods and commodities are to be produced. So they are considered to be the best judges of what they want. And so that is why, you see, the theory of economic valuation is mostly based on the individual preferences and choices. So whatever individual prefers or choose for having, so based on that, actually, economic valuation will be decided. So people express their preferences through the choices and the trade-off that they make given certain constraints, and these constraints will include their time, their income, and so many other things. Because it's not that it's unconstrained kind of a thing. So you always have limited means, as I pointed out. So these limited means will decide, okay, what kind of choice or preferences that you will be having while, okay, making a call regarding goods and services in the economy or the society. So we can define, how can we define economic value? There are different ways actually, but so what we can tell, or maybe what we can talk about economic value is something like this. Probably we can measure the economic value of a particular item or maybe a good by the maximum amount of other things that a person is willing to give up or sacrifice to have that item. For example, if you are considering a loaf of bread, you can say that the economic value of the loaf of bread will be the maximum amount of other things that a person is willing to give up to have that loaf of bread. So in essence, we are talking about, okay, kind of sacrificing something to get this present item. So in essence, this is a trade-off actually. So how much we are going to live for getting this, so that will decide how much of economic value we have for this. Okay. So we can consider the economy to be just consisting of only two goods, and suppose that one person only has to choose out of two goods. For example, it might be bread and pasta, bread and pizza, whatever that may be, food items, let us say. Then in that case, the value of a loaf of bread would be measured by the most pasta that the person is willing to give up to have one more loaf of bread. Okay, so if there are choices in the form of loaf of bread or maybe pasta, so if we want to measure the economic value of the loaf of bread, so that will be in terms of the maximum amount of pasta that the person is willing to give up to have the loaf of bread. So that way, in fact, we can define economic value of the loaf of bread. So in terms of sacrifices, in terms of willingness to give up, so that decides the economic value, right? So therefore, what we can say is that economic value can be measured by the most or the maximum someone who is willing to give up in other goods and services in order to obtain a good service or a state of the world. Okay, so that is how economic value can be defined. So economic value will be the most or the maximum that someone is willing to give up in other goods and services. In this case, if we are talking about economic value of the loaf of bread, we are saying the maximum amount of pasta that he is going to give up to get or maybe have this loaf of bread. Okay, so that is what is economic value. In a market economy, you see, in some cases we have this marketable products. In some other cases, we do not have the marketable products. So in those cases, actually, so you can have other options to find out economic value of goods and services. For example, if it is a market economy, so some currencies or maybe universally accepted currencies might be actually measuring the economic value. For example, if we talk about dollar or maybe pound sterling or maybe Japanese yen, so these are some of the actually kind of currencies that are accepted worldwide. Of course, the most preferred one is the dollar. So in that case, suppose we can talk about the number of dollars, for example. So a person is willing to pay for something. So that will actually, means in fact, mm, something like this. Maybe what we can say, the number of dollars that a person is willing to pay for something, so will tell us how much of all other goods and services they are willing to give up to get that item. It may not be exactly in terms of physical item, it might be in terms of the dollar. In that case, we consider that is the willingness to pay, or value might be actually considered to be in terms of the willingness to pay. So how much the people are willing to pay for a particular good, okay, above the other goods and services. So that way, probably we can define or measure economic value. So you see, we know about the demand function, law of demand, and that the demand function, so which actually tells us a certain a number of things. So that is the relationship between the quantity demanded and the price. When the price of a commodity is relatively high, the quantity demanded of that commodity will be relatively low. So when the price of a good increases, people will purchase less of that good. So that is basically the law of demand. It's an inverse relationship between the price and quantity of a particular product. People demand less of something when it is more expensive. So when the price is high, amount demanded of the commodity will be less and less. Of course, this assumption or maybe this relationship will be based on certain other things, that we assume that prices of other goods and people's income haven't changed, they remain constant. Okay, so that is one condition, or maybe there are a number of other conditions actually which we are making while talking about this type of a relationship, inverse relationship between the price of a product and quantity consumed, right? So by relating the quantity demanded and the price of a good, we can estimate the demand function for that particular good. From this demand function, actually we can draw the demand curve, and the demand demand curve is nothing but the graphical representation of the demand function that we have been doing. Actually, you know it very well. So we have a two-dimensional diagram where on one side we can have the quantity demanded, and the other side it's the price, and the demand curve is a downward sloping curve, right? So normally we assume, as I told you actually at the very beginning, we assume that the goods market price measures its economic value. Normally we feel like that the whatever market price is that actually shows or reflects the value of the product, but it is not actually correct, right? uh, Actually the market price tells us the minimum amount that people who buy the good are willing to pay for it, because you see, so we defined a concept called consumer surplus. Probably you can remember that. In case of consumer surplus, we were saying that people were actually willing to pay a little bit high for that much of the product, but the product is available at lesser price, so that's why they are happy to pay the decided market decided price for that product. So the difference between what they are willing to pay and the price at which they are purchasing the product, that actually gives us the consumer surplus. So this is a kind of triangle below the point at which the demand curve intersects the y-axis, and it's area actually. It's area of the triangle which is formed by the demand curve and the line at which in fact which is decided as the price for the product. So that triangle will give us the consumer surplus, right? So when people purchase a marketed good, they compare the amount they would be willing to pay for that good with its market price. They will normally purchase that good if their willingness to pay is equal to or greater than the price. So that is how the concept of consumer surplus will come into being. So many people are actually willing to pay more than the market price for a good, and thus their values exceed the market price. So that is why when you see the market price decides or maybe reflects the value of the product or goods or services, that is not entirely correct. Rather, we can see that it's the surplus, which will economic surplus or maybe consumer surplus, which will actually represent the economic value of the goods and services, right? So the economic benefit to individuals is normally measured by the consumer surplus, and that consumer surplus, very well, that was shown. So that's the area of the triangle formed below the demand curve up to the point which is actually decided by the market price. Okay. Of course, these economic benefits will be dependent upon number of factors. Those things we will not try to look into as of now. Similarly, in case of consumer surplus, this consumer surplus will actually give us the value or the benefits that people will be getting. That will be the value for the corresponding to the product that we are talking about. Similarly, we can talk about it's from the point of view of the consumer. Similarly, we can find the value for the producer as well, and that value for the producer is given by the producer surplus. So how is it given? See, producers of goods also receive economic benefits. So that will be based on the profits that they will be making when they sell the goods. So normally, the cost of production will decide, cost of overall cost will decide on the price, and the people might be willing to pay higher prices. So that basically means the producers will be earning profits. So these profits are actually reflective of the economic benefits that the producers will be getting. So economic benefits to producers will be measured by the concept of producer surplus, which is, as you saw already, it is the area above the supply curve. And supply curve, supply curve actually represents the relationship between quantity which will be supplied by the producer and the price for the product that they will be receiving. So it's a positive relationship, because at higher prices, the producers will be interested to supply more commodities to the market. So there is a positive relationship between price and quantity supplied. So it's an upward sloping curve. Okay. So that way, in fact, the producer surplus will be the area above the supply curve till the market price. So that's the actually area of the triangle which is formed in between these two. And so that way, in fact, we have producer surplus, which will be reflective of the value for the product by the producer. Now, if we talk about the societal value for a particular product, we need to take into account both the consumer surplus and the producer surplus together. So economic benefits overall, or maybe economic value of a product or a service, goods or service, whatever that may be. So that will be comprising of both the consumer surplus and the producer surplus minus any cost associated with the policy or maybe initiative. So these things we need to take into account, and this will constitute the overall economic value of any goods and services. Right? Could you get the point? Any question till this point? So, well, you see here, we are talking about the different types of values. Yes, economic value is there. So when you talk about economic value of ecosystem services or maybe of environmental goods and services, we need to find out how we can classify these values or economic values. Here, of course, we are in case of ecosystem services or kind of environmental goods and resources, we can have two distinct types of values. One is the use value, and the other one is the non-use value. Now, use value, in case of use value, so that is use values will be based on actual use of the environment, but non-use values will not be based on actual use of the environment. It will be kind of indirect use in a sense. Indirectly, how we can actually value the environment. Based on that, we can get these non-use values. So it is something like this here. We are saying use value is nothing but the satisfaction or the utility that consumers obtain by directly consuming the goods. So we can have different types of activities. For example, we can talk about hunting. We can talk about hiking through the woods, fishing, for example, bird watching. So these are kind of direct use. So we have direct use values. for most consumer goods, actually, the use values will be giving us, means in fact, so this is the use value which will decide why we care about this type of goods and services. But for environmental goods, this use value might include a number of things. Already I talked about this one. No? Hunting might be one use value, fishing might be another use value. So that way it goes. Similarly, you can also talk about uh, similarly also you can talk about the recreational values of a particular site. So kind of environmental assets are there in the form of maybe many things are there. Rivers will be there. Okay, blue sky might be one environmental asset. Similarly, national parks, forest reserves, all those things might be assets. So people can derive value of the recreation, value of recreation at a particular site. Some say that the river Brahmaputra itself is a kind of very pleasing experience. So that can also be a kind of recreational, provide you some kind of recreational value. Value of open space, for example, near your house, so where you live, that itself has certain kind of value. Okay, so you might be using it, it may not be, in fact, it will have certain value, no doubt. So value from better health, that can also be associated with the environment. The value of ecological services, for example, a wetland is there, a mountain is there, a hill is there. So it may not be exactly kind of recreational value, but it will be providing a lot of ecological services. Okay, so those things will be in the form of use values for environmental resources, right? Many a time people say that use value, which is defined as the actual use of a good or services. So this might also have or include some indirect uses. For example, uh, so if we talk about Sundarban, okay, Sundarban provides direct use values to the people for recreational purposes. For example, let us consider that they are actually uh, people visit Sundarban and they get some recreational values out there. So that is fine. So some other people might enjoy uh, that particular site by watching it in the television show. So in that case, they are not getting a direct use value, but they are kind of getting some kind of indirect. It's not it's not a use value. It's a use value, but this use value is not directly means obtained by the people out there, but they might get it by indirectly using it in the television sets. So so that type of a thing is also there, right? So this is one use value. The other one is the non-use value. But in the case of use value, sometimes in case of non-use value, normally we talk about three values. One is the existence values, one is the option value, and the third one is the bequest value. Now, in some cases, people feel that this option value can also be part of the use values. Why it's so? What is option value? Option value is the value associated with something which can be actually, which can have an option for use in the future. For example, so we are talking about Sundarban, right? So if the Sundarban, we may not be using it as of now, we may not be visiting, or may not be getting the recreational value of Sundarban by visiting it today. But if it is there in the future, probably I can visit it and I can get some recreational value by visiting Sundarban. So that is an option. If there is an option, okay, so the value associated with the option of preserving it for the future, so that is known as the option value. And people say that it might be part of the use values. But in most cases, they consider this to be non-use values because we are not using it as of now directly. So probably in the future, we might use it in direct form or maybe in indirect form. So that's why we have this option value, the value placed on a future ability to use the environment. People are willing to pay for an option to use the environment in the future, even they are not currently using it. So they are not currently using it, but it might be used in the future. So in the case of non-use values, so what we are trying to say is that so there might be three different types. One might be in the form of existence value, in which case something so we can get some pleasure or maybe values or maybe we value the fact that certain thing exists. Okay, so that itself might be kind of important thing for us. So in that case, we can say that that is the existence value. For example, biodiversity, or maybe we can talk about Kaziranga National Park. The simple fact that Kaziranga National Park is there, or maybe in Kaziranga National Park, one horned rhino is there. So that itself, okay, the existence of that itself will give us some kind of value, or maybe so we can have some kind of importance to that. So that can be considered to be an existence value, example of existence value, where actually something exists, and the mere fact that something exists, that can be a value, that can be considered as a value for that particular resource. So in that case, we consider this is a existence value. Similarly, we have another value associated with non-use values. So that is known as bequest value. Bequest value. So this value is the value that people place on knowing that future generations will have the option to enjoy something. Now, see, in case of existence value, also it is also for the future. Bequest value is also for the future. But in the case of existence value, the difference we are saying is that, so I may have the option of visiting it. Sorry, not existence, option value I'm talking about. In the case of option value, the idea is that I may have an option of okay, using it in the future. So that's why it is option value. In the case of bequest value, actually it's not for me. It might be for the future generation. The preservation of that particular resource is to be done for the fact that the future generation will be using it, or maybe making use of that at some point of time, or maybe getting some value out of it in indirect way. So that is bequest value. So it's not for me, but for the future generation. So in that case, what we can say, the bequest value probably can be measured or estimated by people's willingness to pay to preserve the natural environment for future generations. Okay, so because we are saying that the value that the future generation will be getting, that means basically we have to preserve it, and for preserving it, how much of value we are associating with that resource. So that will give us the kind of bequest value. In essence, what we can say is that probably somebody might be willing to protect the Sundarban, and for that, so that future generations will have the opportunity to enjoy it. So by showing his willingness to pay for preservation of Sundarban, he is actually placing some value on it. So that will be the bequest value. So non-use values are also referred to as passive values. It's not so active. It's not active values. It's passive values, and these passive values are values that are not associated with the actual use, or even the option to use a good or services. Okay, so that's the passive value. So in essence, we can say that a single person may benefit in more than one way from the same ecosystem. Okay, so I as a person might be getting the value by directly using it. Suppose, for example, if we talk about forest, from the forest I can make use of the timber, so that might be having market value. Okay, so that's the use value we will be getting. So forest might also give us some kind of recreational values. That is the indirect use value. Okay, similarly, we can think about the kind of bequest value from the forest. So that is again non-use value. So we can get benefits or values from more than one way from the same ecosystem. Okay, so it might be a wetland, it might be forest, it might be water, it might be river, whatever that may be. So we can find so many other different uses, or maybe ways. It might be non-use, so from which also we can derive benefits or maybe values. So that way, in fact, it will be more than one source, or maybe one way that we can derive benefits from the same ecosystem. So if we have to talk about total economic value of an ecosystem, for example, so in that case, we have to take into account all the relevant use values as well as the non-use values of that ecosystem or maybe the resource. Okay, so if we have to talk about the valuation of suppose a particular national park or maybe kind of wildlife sanctuaries, so we have to take into account both the timbers, so which will have market values, as well as so other non-use values, maybe in the form of existence value, maybe in the form of option value, maybe in the form of bequest value, whatever that may be. This is the sum to the economic value will be the sum total of all the relevant use and non-use values. Okay, so these things we have to keep in mind. And so if we have to talk about kind of economic value of certain goods and services, then we have to take into account all these things, right? Next, we can talk about different approaches which can be used for so this altruistic value is also there. Sometimes we talk about that. Here, of course, we are not talking about the option value. So kind of this type of a thing might be there. Total economic value is summation of use value as well as non-use value. These are some of the reasons why we need to value the environment. Already I have mentioned about that. Kind of no price data exists for non-marketed environmental resources. Demand or prices for private goods can be obtained from the market, but in case of environmental resources, of course, these things are not like that. So price data are not available. Many of the things are not marketed or marketable. So price data will obviously not be there. So there will be a need for information on benefits and cost of protecting and restoring the environment to guide policy making. So obviously for that, we need to have ideas about valuation. Information on benefits and cost of protecting and restoring the environment to guide budget allocation is important. The information to guide compensation setting for victims. Sometimes it so happens that because of certain things, environment degrades, and this degradation of environment in the form of maybe soil kind of erosion and so many other things, so people suffer, and that is to be compensated. And for compensating the victims also, okay, the valuation is important. How much value of that resource will be, that needs to be found out or maybe identified. But prior information normally will not be available. So this valuation of resources will help us in identifying or maybe estimating the compensation. Similarly, these are some other things which we are actually talking about. Talking about the valuation of environmental resources. Information is required on external cost of development projects to guide development policies. Information to guide setting of user charges, fees, taxes for pollution control. So this has become very important nowadays. So how much of user charges are to be charged on the user, or maybe fees, or maybe taxes for pollution control. So those things are important. So that's why actually maybe information on valuation is important. Need information to guide efficient and fair resource allocation. These are some of the reasons why we need to value environmental resources or maybe overall environment. So next, we can talk about the methods of measuring environmental values. So this is important because in practical situation, we have to take into account all these things. So broadly, we have two different approaches. So these are the revealed preference approach and the stated preference approach. Now, when you talk about this revealed preference approach, revealed preference means preferences are revealed. The name itself will tell so what it means. So revealed preference approach means the preferences of the people are revealed in actual setting or actual behavior. So by observing people making choices, so we can infer what can be the value of the particular resource. So in revealed preference approach, real choices of people are observed in some market and information are inferred on the trade-offs between money and the environmental goods. Okay, so it's something like that only. It's not that we are asking somebody that how much you are suffering or how much you have suffered. It's not like that. You need to observe how people behave, and that will actually help us in identifying so how they value certain particular goods and services in actual situation. And based on that, we can infer that economic value of the resource will be something like this. So we infer the value of environmental goods normally from other market transactions. You see, so in case of environmental valuation, there is one technique which is known as hedonic pricing technique. So in hedonic pricing technique, what we do so we'll be discussing this in detail in the next few classes. So in hedonic pricing methods of environmental valuation, so it has a link with housing market. So if you observe the behavior of people who buy houses, you will find that apart from other things, so there are so many other things. So how much price people are willing to pay for a particular house or flat, that depends on so many things. Okay, the proximity to the market, proximity to the schools and colleges, proximity to the city centers, all those things will decide on the means prices of houses in different locations. For example, if you know about Guwahati city, so in case of Guwahati city, any place near to maybe the Brahmaputra or maybe towards Panbazar area or maybe GS route will be fetching higher prices, or maybe will be costing more compared to some other places which are a little bit away from these places, right? So if you are towards Nunmati, probably the prices of the houses will be a little bit lesser compared to the prices of the houses in GS route or maybe in Uzan Bazar area. So here, what is happening apart from other things, the location is also contributing towards the price of the houses. So this location, why location will be having certain values out here. For example, if your house, the kind of the house which you want to purchase is nearer to the river Brahmaputra, then obviously it will give you a relatively better view. It will give you some relatively better environment, and you are actually going to pay higher for that better environment. Okay, in a sense, by observing the behavior of the people in terms of purchase of housing or purchase of houses in different locations, we can understand what kind of values people are putting or placing on the environment. It's not the price of the house, but actually we are also indirectly inferring the prices the people are paying for the quality of environment at different locations. So that is how this reveal preference approach is resorted to in getting information about the prices or the values on environmental resources. We try to observe the behavior of the people in particular situation, and we try to infer from that observation of the behavior of the people their valuation or their values about particular goods or services. That is how the approach of reveal preference helps in understanding estimation of economic value. I hope you could understand this. Okay, in field work, if any of you have any idea of resorting to field work or maybe carrying out field work activities, you'll be knowing it very well. You see, so if somehow, I'm just giving you an example. Suppose if you ask somebody about their income level, so people will normally give you the exact information. They'll simply say some range or something like that. Of course, it's a kind of very private and personal information which many people do not want to divulge. But the fact is that even if they divulge, they will not be telling you the truth. If you go for stated preference method, in case of stated preference, we ask people regarding different things. Okay, so they will tell us about that. For example, in case of environmental resources, we might ask them how good or how valuable that resource is. Okay, how much an environmental good is worth, something like that. Okay, we can ask, and then they will hypothetically give some information. So that may be in the case of stated preference, they will be stating. So they will be showing their preference by way of their statement, not by way of actual action. So in that case, it will be stated preference method. So in the example that I wanted to give you, if we suppose ask somebody about the wages or maybe the salary that they are getting, so they probably will be telling you some values that which may not be exact, right? So they will be saying something. Then in case of stated preference method or approach, then we have to accept that to be correct, but that may not be correct all the time. So the correct way of that probably will be to get information on his salary if he is an employee in terms of his salary statement. If you get the salary statement, you will be getting the correct thing, right? So that way, in fact, there is a difference in case of reveal preference and the stated preference. Or in other way, other words, what you can see, So you might ask somebody about what he will be doing in a hypothetical situation. For example, uh, kind of insofar as environmental protection is concerned, if you ask somebody about environmental protection behavior, so he will say something. But if you can observe his behavior in actual situation, only then you will be able to find out whether he actually behaves like that or his behavior will be different from what he has stated. So there is a difference actually. In many cases, it is difficult for the investigators to find out actual kind of behavior of the people in actual situation. So although we prefer the reveal preference thing, that reveal preference thing might not be possible in many cases. Okay. So for example, certain projects are undertaken. Okay, a bridge is constructed, a road is being widened. Okay, so these things are happening almost every day. So if a road is being widened, it is believed that the bigger road or maybe wider road will help commuters and at the same time will be beneficial for the dwellers nearby the road as well. But the fact is that you see, so it's not very easy to estimate the value of that beforehand because you will not be having any direct information or maybe direct data on that. But so in those cases, we do not have any other option but to go for kind of stated preference approach. In which case, probably we might ask people about their valuation in terms of their willingness to pay and other things. Okay, so if they are willing to pay a little bit higher, basically that shows that they value this widening of the road to be a little bit higher, or maybe so they will be considering this widening act to be of value to the society at large. Similarly, it might so happen that the municipality of a particular city might be interested in restoring the old buildings. So old buildings probably, so they need some kind of preservation kind of a thing. Now, in the absence, might be posing some kind of threat to the society at large, and it will also not look very good aesthetically. So that might pose some kind of challenges for the municipality. So, to have some idea about how much value the city dwellers will be having for these old structures or old buildings. So again, people might go and ask the city dwellers to value to value these buildings or maybe structures. How do they look at the value of the structures, old buildings? And you may ask, people may ask, or maybe investigators may go to them and ask how they value these buildings. And accordingly, some idea can be obtained or some information can be inferred regarding the likely value of these assets or maybe these buildings by the city dwellers out there. So this is how actually this is done, because many a time we do not have prior information. We need to have some idea about the value of certain activities or certain goods and resources, and for that people have to be asked about their preferences and willingness to pay, so which will be roughly representing their valuation of these goods or services. So that way it is done. So we go for either stated preference technique or for reveal preference technique. So in the case of stated preference technique, the dominant method for environmental valuation is contingent valuation method. So something like this: stated preference contingent valuation method. Sometimes there is a method called contingent ranking as well. Now, in the case of reveal preference method, so there are certain, again, in this approach, there will be certain other methods. I talked about hedonic pricing method. Similarly, we can have this travel cost method. Then household production function method is there. This response approach, the spellings, there are issues with the spellings out here, typos are there. Averting expenditure or avoided cost approach. So these are some of the approaches which might be resorted to for kind of having some kind of idea on the values of this type of environmental goods and services. So what I'll do, I'll try to continue with the discussion of these individual valuation techniques one by one. I'll do it maybe from the next class onwards. In the meanwhile, till now, if you have any question or any query, please raise your queries. Any question till this point? Don't have any question? So in that case, I'll not start a detailed discussion on these individual techniques.